love the chase and the hunt, and I set
Welcome
the pace
here
when
to
I
this
run
Wake
it.
Up Call with Dan Tortora special inside the Cafe Kubal studios. I am honored and privileged to have here with me the wonderful, wonderful gentleman who made sure that a dream of mine that I had grown up, I always loved the logo at UAB. And so the question was, how do I make sure that I'm looking good in UAB gear? And Mark Ingram answered that question and took that little kid in me that was like, gosh, I love that logo. And then gave me something to put on my head and as well as put on my body as I'm walking out. So Associate VP and Director of Athletics at UAB, here with me, University of Alabama, Birmingham, with the Blazers is Mark Ingram. Mark, how are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you doing? You're looking good. I can tell you that.
No, I appreciate that very much. And here in the studio, I'm rocking this. And then in the office, I have the letter that you also sent me. So many thanks to you. And I want to say before we get started with anything, and this is not pandering to anything at all. This is, I think in today's world, we need to hear the positivity and hear about the good ones. And from the moment that I reached out to you and we got to interact, you have treated me like a king. You have given me great respect. You've always given your time, and the notes that you've sent my way, messages you sent over, the letter that you sent as well has been extremely kind. And so I want to thank you for your humbleness, for your generosity, and for really making me feel welcome with open arms to my coverage of UAB. So I really want to thank you for that.
Yeah, man, you do a great job, and we appreciate you covering us. And we think the Blazers have got a great story to tell, and you help us do it. So thank you.
Absolutely. So with that being said, there's a lot of interesting things going on because we're ending Conference USA. We're thinking American Athletic. As the Associate VP and Director of Athletics, how have you navigated the balancing act of let's make this swan song in Conference USA a beautiful one, but then let's also in the background be setting ourselves up for the American?
Yeah, well, you point out something there, which is that we sort of do have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And, so our fall sports, think football, volleyball, our 2 soccer teams, they've already finished their fall season in Conference USA. So they are thinking ahead already to, what does next season look like in the American. Sports like basketball, which are finishing up soon, they'll immediately turn their attention that way. And then of course your spring sports will still close out in Conference USA through the end of the spring semester into May. So but in terms of navigating, we've been doing a lot of research to see how are we different than the schools that are already in the American. We're very similar to the 5 others from Conference USA that are going to the American with us.
Yeah.
We know what our similarities are there and what our differences are, which are not many differences at all. And then just trying to really get our arms around what are the differences in terms of whether it's staffing, it might be compensation, it could be number of staff, could be both, could be facilities differences, what is different about them or makes them, separate from us, and what are the things we need to be doing to be like them and not just like them, but better than them. So we've been, probably for a year studying that to try to get ourselves slowly closer to what those schools look like, so that when we truly enter on July 1st, we feel like we do so, we sort of thunder in. We don't want to limp in. We want to show up and be competitive on day one. And that's our plan. We know that will be a challenge, a great challenge, but that's our goal. We're not just going to show up and say we're happy to be here. We're intending to show up and win.
Yeah, and that's been a huge piece of, and we'll tell the UAB story as we go here. On the men's side of things, when we look at men's basketball as we're heading into tourney time, seeing where this team is in the top 3 in Conference USA, to be there and to have the top 3 in Conference USA all be teams that are heading on to the American, just what that says about the level of competition that not only will you bring to the American Athletic, but that some of your other teams here in Conference USA your peers in Conference USA will also be bringing, as FAU, North Texas, and UAB have all made a push to be at the top of the men's basketball side of things this season in Conference USA.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Conference USA is a lot better this year as a league altogether. At one point, I don't know what our RPI is today, but at one point it was as high as 10th, and meaning the 10th best conference in the sport of basketball in the country out of 30 something. And that's the best ranking in my time here. I've been here almost 8 years, and 10th would be the best ranking as a league we've had. So it tells you that we're all pretty tough. We can all beat each other. I think on any given night we've seen that. That's talked about a lot, conference to conference, but we really believe that in our league this year to be true. We've lost games to teams that I thought, wow, that team really looked better than us, and then we've turned around and a few weeks later beaten them the same way and thought, well, okay, wait a minute, I was wrong altogether. And so it's a matter of, what team is gelling at the right time and how did they play? Did your top scoring threats have an off night? Those kind of things. It's just sports. But it also says a lot to me about why we should expand the NCAA tournament. To me, there's some really good basketball teams that don't get a chance to move forward after their conference tournament. I think that's a terrible, I don't know. I just think it's a real shame. It's a terrible look for the sport. For as a fan, which I am of the game, I like to see Maryland, Baltimore County, and the St. Peter's Peacocks, and Loyola Chicago, and that those games. I mean, that's part of what makes it all so much fun is to see those unique matchups against the blue bloods, as they call it, in college basketball. And I honestly feel like the people that are against it are the ones that frankly just, it's about self-preservation for them. They know that if they have to match up against UAB, if we finish third in the league in Conference USA, they would like to say, well, we're not playing them because they're not any good. No, they don't want to play us because they know we might beat them. That's the real truth, Dan. They don't want to play us because they're afraid they would lose, which is the same reason why they won't play us at home. They won't come to play at Bartow Arena because they're afraid, and they know that the likelihood increases significantly if they play us here versus on a neutral site, and certainly versus playing at their arena. So that's the answer. They don't want us to get on a neutral court and all of a sudden not have the crowd noise and all their music and whatever shifted in their direction, and it's a neutral game, and now we're just going to lace up the sneakers and go, and they're afraid that they would lose. So that's why people try to hold that tournament down, and they'll disguise it with the term player safety. It's just too many games for the kids, and that's total, that's just ridiculous. That's just an excuse to not expand the tournament. So I'm hoping that all these things will help us lead to an expansive tournament.
And we look at, and you mentioned this here with the Associate VP and Director of Athletics at UAB for the Blazers, Mark Ingram, here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. As you get ready to join the American, and I'm laughing to myself because of how ridiculous I think this is. There's Houston, right? Houston this season for the American. Well, they got to make it. Look at them. Look what they've done. They've, ranked the #1 team in the country. And then they're like, okay, maybe we let Memphis in. But then you look at Tulane and I say, is it necessary? And this is not witch hunt in the Big Ten. I'm just using this as an example. Do you have to take 9 out of 14 teams from the Big Ten, or could you take Tulane from the American? Knowing that the American Athletic has had games and teams that have made an interesting look at it. Wichita State used to be at the top of the heap. They came to the American and they're in the middle of the pack. That tells you about the level of competition they're going up against. Yet, I don't think anybody wants to play Wichita State. No. So you see Wichita State, you see how Tulane's gotten better. You see Memphis under Penny Hardaway of the teams that are remaining in the American Athletic. And I say, would I want Wichita State in the tournament and have to play them? Would I want to play Memphis? Would I want to arguably maybe play Tulane? So that conversation in the American is being had as well. It's not just the North Texas FAU UAB in Conference USA, and you'll all be joining the American, but it's okay when Houston's gone. Now that Houston's finally gotten some respect, does Memphis now get the respect? And now do they say we're only going to take one team from the American Athletic? Because there's a bunch of teams within this, and I'll tell anybody on any day, I wouldn't want to see Wichita State. I don't care I don't care if they were 7-10 when they played me. So there's certain teams you don't want to see. And like you said, people don't want to see UAB. You know, we know that schools like Texas don't want to see North Texas, do they? So there's the reality of needing to, even with 68, to say, do you need to take 90% of one conference? I mean, you look at it last year, they took almost the entire Big Ten, and the Big Ten didn't show up. So, and the teams now that they're looking at, they're 12 lost teams. And it's hard for me to argue, well, they beat a top 25. Well, they did this. Once you get past 11 losses, it's hard for me to hear that argument unless you're going to be a play-in game. So when you say you want to see it expand, and I understand your argument for it, we're already at 68. How far do we need to go?
Well, I would double it. You know, for me, I would love to see it. Well, I'd like to go to 128. You know, not 68, but make it 128. Double the field of 64. That would more than encompass what is currently going to the NIT. You know, it's interesting too. The men's NIT is 32 teams. The women's NIT is another 64, which I think is terribly unfair. The thing is, Dan, look at it like this. Here's how I see it. The football, in the sport of football, coaches are so largely judged on whether or not they get to a bowl game. Now, you know, if you go 6-6 for 5 straight years, obviously at some point your fan base is going to be unsatisfied with that. But initially, you got a new coach coming in. It's like, okay, you know, if we hadn't been winning, whatever, let's get to a bowl game. Then let's get to repeated bowl games where going to a bowl game is the expectation. It's not unusual. It's what we do. Well, if there's 133 Division I FBS schools, 82 get to go to bowl games. 82 out of that many.
Yeah.
In men's basketball and women's basketball, there's 355 teams, and only 64 plus the 4 playing, 68 out of that many get to go to the NCAA tournament. And those coaches are judged on whether or not they make it to the tournament and then how they do in that tournament. So it's really unfair to the coaches, and it's not a fair representation of the season that they had. You're telling me that, let's just use UAB for the example. If we finish third in Conference USA,
yeah,
I can assure you, and you were talking about this, the number 9 team in the Big Ten, they don't want to play us. Heck, the number 4 team in the Big Ten doesn't want to play us. You know, none of them probably want to play us. But I can assure you the number 9 team doesn't want to play us. And we've got a real shot at going in there and making some noise if we get into that tournament. That again, is why I hope we expand the tournament, because I think I just think it's good for the game. I think it's good for the student athletes to have the opportunity. The tournament is awesome. It's like the best thing we do all year as a governing body. That event is phenomenal. And I'm for inclusion. I'd like to just include more people because I think it's healthy for the competition. And I'm about spirit of competition. And, you know, if those blue bloods are so good, all they got to do is beat us. You know, don't worry about us because you're so good. Don't worry about playing us because you'll beat us anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good argument to make. If you know, if you're not worried, then just play the game. But I mean, and the thing is, I mean, I think 68 is it's a big number. But, you know, like you said, when you put it in perspective of 350, 353, 355, 268, it's very small. And in college football, more than half the teams that compete in Division I FBS make it. 82 of 130, whatever it is now, 133 or something of that. So the reality is more are going than aren't going. In the case of expanding it, like you said, even if you were to double it, it would still be a third.
Yeah,
So
less than half.
It would still leave 2/3 out of the postseason, which is not what happens with college football by any stretch of the imagination. So, I mean, I think you have some points here. I think, hearing the number 128 would probably make a bunch of people kind of widen their eyes, because we've talked about 70 something, we've talked about 90, but when you put it in a perspective of it being a third, and I mean, listen, this is what it really comes down to. If you're going to take more than half of one in the ACC, I mean, I don't know what they did to piss somebody off a couple of years ago, but I've covered the ACC for a decade now, and they said last year the ACC is not good. It's a down year. They're not competitive. They're not going to beat anybody. And they went and embarrassed the heck out of everyone, including the Big Ten, and they kept advancing and pushed themselves all the way. So, I mean, I look at that, and I watched the ACC, and I just watched Georgia Tech beat Syracuse by 20 in Syracuse in the Dome, 96-76, hit 18 3-pointers, and they had not won an ACC road game all season, and they were 4-14 coming in the conference. So I look at that, and then last year I look at Virginia Tech's run through the ACC tournament. I look at what Syracuse did without Buddy Boeheim. I look at what Duke's doing without Coach K right now. How can you sit here and say that North Carolina is a team that somebody wants to play, or Duke's a team that somebody wants to play? There's teams inside of the ACC that aren't even getting the love anymore. And I think it was, to play into the points we're talking about, you got Pitt and Clemson sitting at the top of the ACC, and nobody ranked them in the top 25 in the media or the coaches poll. They ranked the 3 teams below them, essentially saying, if you guys don't win the tournament, even if you're the best above Miami and NC State at the time that was ranked, and Virginia, if you're better than those 3 teams, we're going to let them in over you because you don't have the history. And it's not about history. It's about wins and losses this year, this season. Rankings should never be made based on a movie that was really good back in the day, or some feel-good moment from 20 years ago, or a coach that you just think had a great story on 30 for 30, whatever it may be. It's supposed to be on what you put on film that season, that moment. And in that respect, I think that it would be nice with 32 conferences for us to see not just an automatic qualifier, but at least to see in a bunch of these conferences, a couple teams go. It would be nice to see the top 2 of Conference USA at least, right? The top 2 of the American. I would rather see 2 from one conference than 10 from 14 total in a conference.
Well, and it's just a shame when the team that wins the regular season. So if for us, Florida Atlantic, they win the regular season this year. They've had a great year.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point they had won, I think, 20 games in a row or something. If they don't win the conference tournament, which I certainly hope they don't, because I'm pulling for the Blazers, but if they don't win the conference, or let's say they get to the championship and they lose, and they don't get to go to the NCAA tournament, but the number 9 team out of some autonomy league, they do get to go, and it's for all the reasons you just said. History, but the coach is just so well thought of. It's just all those other factors that go into it. And look, I'm not trying to take a shot at the selection committee. That job is hard. I've got a lot of friends on it. It's really hard.
Yeah,
but they're humans, and that's what they are. It's not their fault, just what they are. And so, to a fault, they will make decisions without intending to. That is based a lot on history and other things, and instead of really looking at it going, you know what though, Florida Atlantic, who did this and at one point was ranked, I think, top 15 in the country, they ought to go to the tournament. They ought to be in it. They should be in it. UAB has got this many wins in total, and beat this team on the road and the other, and look at to your point, what is it now? Not what was it a year ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. What is it today? Conference USA is a tough league this year, and they ought to recognize that and give us due, where it's deserved. But that's unlikely.
So here's the question. As the director of athletics, how important is it to sit down with your coaches and say, hey, we need non-conference wise, regardless of the sport. We're talking basketball, but you're playing Georgia in football coming up here this season in 2023. How important is sitting down with those coaches and figuring out the scheduling of it all and saying, we're not getting the respect in Conference USA. We may not get it in the American right off the bat. We'll work toward it. So do you sit down and say, listen, we got to play. We got to play the fifth team. And, let's look at where the Big Ten stood. Let's look at who they have coming back. Let's play a couple of those top 5, top 7 Big Ten teams. So toward the end of the season, when we're hearing all these rumblings that they're going to let in 9, we can remind everybody that we beat the 2 we played. How important is that non-conference schedule for UAB in any sport?
Yeah, well, if we're just staying on basketball, it's important in all sports. And we have all gotten data. And when I say we, I mean literally everyone in the autonomy leagues and in the group of 5. We have this information. I'm going to be wrong here, Dan, but I'm going to guess at this, but I'm close in what I'm trying to just sort of recall off the top of my head. If we go play on the road at an autonomy school, the odds of us winning based on history, it's like we have like a 15% chance of winning, 15. If we play them neutral site, it jumps from 15 to like 35%. And if we play them at home, it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
Might even be slightly in our favor, 52 or 55% chance of winning. And so we know that. But those autonomy schools know that too.
Yeah.
So I can say to our coach, Andy Kennedy, Andy, man, what do you think? Let's try to schedule tougher if we could get some tougher teams. He knows that. And I'm fortunate to have a coach that's competitive, and he understands that you might have to go on the road and lose, unfortunately, but you got to go try, whereas some coaches might be afraid of that. They'd rather just get a bunch of easier wins rather than to challenge themselves. Andy Kennedy is not that way, which is a blessing to me. But just because I want to do it doesn't mean that other school will do it, right? Because they know that same thing. Yeah. Okay, all right, we'll play UAB, but only if they come to our place, and we're not going back there. We'll pay them. Let's pay them to come here once in a guarantee game, and then we're not going back. They don't want those neutral site games. You see, look, we beat Georgia neutral site this year.
Yeah.
And Georgia's a solid team coming out of the SEC. We got South Carolina in our gym at home this year, and we beat South Carolina decisively. And they've had some moments where they looked, that South Carolina's not having the season that they would like to have, but they've shown moments of being a pretty good basketball team, even though their record isn't, anything, to write home about maybe, but they clearly are doing some good things here and there.
Yeah.
But they came to our place and we exposed them, right? But we played Georgia neutral site, same thing. We matched up well and we beat them. But if we had to go to play at Georgia, would that outcome have been the same? I don't know. Statistically, the outcome would have been different, which is why people like them, they don't want to play us.
Well, and I think the hard part of this too is we talk about quad wins, right? And that's the new thing. It's not RPI, it's not this, not that, it's quad. And this is all, it always comes back to things being opinionated, right? Because who's considered a quad team? Well, it depends on where they're ranked. Depends on how their conference is viewed. So I can look at FAU and say they're 26, they got 26 wins, right? This is a team that, at a certain point at the end of February, we're looking at a team that was 26-3, 16-2 in the conference. So you go into March with almost 30 wins, not ranked in the nation's top 25. So you're not considered a quad one team, right? So anybody that beats them, you play them in a close game. I think it was 88-86. You play in a game like that, well, they say, okay, well, you played strong against a quad 2 or a quad 3. So I think the reality is, if a conference isn't respected, then no matter how much success a team has within the conference, they will not get the top 25 wins because those teams aren't ranked in the top 25, which is up to the media and the coaches poll. And they won't get the quad one wins that they need. So we're kind of in this vicious cycle of, look at us winning these games, we're demanding respect. But if respect isn't given in the preseason, if respect isn't given throughout, if respect isn't held, if you don't have your top 5, 6 teams in your conference ranked, or any of your teams ranked, then no matter what a team like UAB does, you're always playing behind the 8 ball, because they're going to come to you and say, you don't have quad one wins, you don't have a quad one road win, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't beat a top 25. But with all due respect, shouldn't FAU be in the top 25? So if you beat them, you know what I mean? So it seems like it's a system that's set up to succeed for some and fail for many.
Yeah. You use that term vicious cycle. That's exactly what it is. You know, we can't help what anybody else in our league is, how good they are or are not. You have to play your conference schedule. You know, it just is what it is. And so I can't help what somebody else, how successful they've been or not in their non-conference games. First of all, getting games, much less winning them. Yeah, we lost to Florida Atlantic on the road by 2, and then beat them here at our place by 9 a couple weeks later. They're really good. They're just really solid. What I feel like in watching them twice is there wasn't anything that they ever did that I thought was just super dynamic that made me say wow, as much as they were really efficient. They didn't make a lot of mistakes. They made a lot of shots. You know, they just kind of went out and executed their plan. And but there was never a time where I felt like there was a wow moment for me. I'm not trying to take that away from them as much as really it's more of a compliment that they were just flat out a really good basketball team.
Yeah, that coming here from the Associate VP and Director of Athletics for UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, for the Blazers, Mark Ingram here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. To continue this conversation toward the future, Mark, I'm going to read this off because I get excited about this. Now, I've covered the Americans heading toward their 10-year anniversary, and I've been arm in arm with Mike Oresco, their commissioner, before the conference had a name or a logo. So we've had a lot of conversations, and we stand here today knowing that next season, around March Madness time, the American Athletic will have these names: UTSA, UAB, North Texas, FAU, Rice, UNC Charlotte, Memphis, Tulane, Temple, Wichita State, South Florida, East Carolina, SMU, Tulsa. When I name all of that to you, what are the words that come to mind of the future of the American when we look at next year's March Madness?
Well, you're talking about, other than East Carolina, I think everybody is a large market school. So we have the opportunity from a broadcasting standpoint to really promote our brand and each other's brands. Our brand as a league, but each other's individual brands through some large markets. I think that's really positive. I know that our provost here at UAB, when we were making this decision to accept the invitation, she was really excited about that in terms of student recruitment, you know, just being able to carry the UAB flag into places like Tampa that we had not been, and up to Memphis and Philadelphia and some cities that we have not historically been able to carry the flag to. So she's really excited about that. I think that's really good. But the schools that you mentioned are all schools who historically were kind of at some point were, you know, sort of startups, call them whatever derogatory term somebody might wanted to give us, doormat, cupcake, whatever. But all of us have at some point in the not so distant past had a president a board as an institution said, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to have this and be this bad. If we're going to have it, let's go compete.
Yeah.
And so all of us have invested. We've raised money to invest in facilities, to invest in our people, to invest in the right, tools and resources necessary to go be competitive and be successful. And we've all done that. And that's what's led to the success we've been having, and comes back to why a lot of these, autonomy schools don't want to play us, because we have invested in the right way, that we've got some talented athletes here. And if they catch us on the wrong night, the right night for us, they're going to be in trouble, and they know that. So we may not be ready to compete against the top 5 in those particular sports. In some sports, we probably are. Certain schools, and depending on the sport, again, like Charlotte is historically really tough in soccer. They probably are ready and capable to compete against the top 5. We historically have been really good at men's golf, for example. Well, we can go play against the top 5 or whatever in men's golf and go be competitive. Are we quite there where we'd like to be in football? No, but we're not far. We're not far. We're pretty close. And so that's how we've all changed. We've all improved our ability to be successful. We've invested, like I said, and so I'm excited about it. I think you mentioned Mike Oresco. That's something that he points out is he's visited all of our campuses and is really complimentary of who we all are in various ways. And you can see the investments. I mean, physically, put your eyes on those investments to see, what are the things around campus that would attract a high level student athlete. And that's what's exciting. And so carrying this brand of the American Athletic Conference, that I think has done a really nice job of establishing itself as a member of the P6, which is, to me, I know other conferences would snicker or disagree, but when the Big 12 added 3, where did they come from? It's an independent and 3 from the American. So, say what you want to say, but the fact is that, right? And so we were thrilled to get the call. And funny, when you said that you've been with Mike since before they had a logo. I was at Temple University when the American Conference was formed, and I remember when Mike came to visit us, and we, a group of us, our senior staff, were in our conference room, and Mike and one of his associates came in, and he pulled out sort of this, it was almost like a storyboard, cardboard cutout, and the American logo on it. We were thinking about calling it the American. That's what do you think about it? And I remember us all talking about it, and it's hilarious, what it's evolved into, and which is exciting. It's fun.
Yeah. And you talk about investment, and under your time at UAB so far, reinstated UAB football, rifle, and bowling. You've raised more than $100 million in cash and pledges for UAB athletics. We look at completing the design and construction of a $22.5 million football practice facility, which included a $4.2 million sponsorship naming agreement with Legacy Credit Union, which is the largest ever in UAB history when it came to a naming agreement. Completed over 20 additional facilities projects, a BBVA field, which now seats 6,000 and is the home for your men's and women's soccer, along with the USL professional team, the Birmingham Legion. We have the 8-lane state-of-the-art track and field and a 5-court beach volleyball complex. And so you look at all of that, you look at the, upgrades for men's and women's basketball, as well as the approval of Protective Stadium for UAB football. So there's been a lot of work that is done. And you talked about investing, right? Investing and making it a place where a prospective student comes on campus and wants to be a part of it, right? A coach, a teacher, whoever it may be. And under your time there, these are big things, Mark. These aren't tiny feats to try and take, especially when we look at football. So I want to get your thoughts on the investment and all of this stuff happening under your tenure. But I want to make a note really quick here that when football returned in 2017, just to let people know this, they have made a bowl game in 5 of the last 6 seasons since returning, winning 3 of those 5, including the last 2. So very put it to you like this. When do we see a team go out of existence, come back, immediately be successful, and continue to have success, change a coach and get back to a bowl game still and be on the rise? I've jokingly said before that there's some other football teams in Division I AFBS that maybe they should take the UAB model, cancel their program and bring it back because they've struggled so much. And you guys have shown that you can be immediately successful after having the darkest day that football ever saw. So I'd love to get your take on investing and all of the things that have happened under you. I didn't name them all, but there's a bunch. And football being a part of that, that it didn't seem right for UAB to not have football. And obviously it didn't last that long.
Yeah, and I'll correct you. We've been invited to 6 in 6 years, 6 bowl games, 6 years. The one that you're missing
is the COVID year.
It's the COVID year. We were invited and accepted to the Gasparilla Bowl down in Tampa. We were supposed to play South Carolina, and South Carolina withdrew from the game because of draft time.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but
you were 6-3 that year. So let me correct
and we won our championship that year. We won the conference championship in that odd year. So we've won 3 division titles in 6 years, and we've won 2 conference titles in those 6 years. But you're right. You know,
and been bowl eligible in all 6 years since returning. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And we built the practice facility, which you mentioned. Thank you. And now built the stadium, which is fabulous. I mean, it really may be the nicest college stadium in the country. It's not the biggest, but it is really incredibly nice. And it's not small. I mean, it's 42, just shy of 43,000 seats. And so it's a great size for us, and really in the modern era of sport, probably is a better size for a lot of schools than they'd like to admit. But what these investments do, you're talking about our track and our soccer stadium. We built a softball stadium. We're trying to do some work for baseball now, turning our attention there. We're redone their field over the winter, and a new surface there, and we'll keep doing some other things there. We need to renovate our arena. We have a great arena, Bartow Arena. It's just starting to show its age and needs kind of a refresh, which we're focused on. But yeah, it's probably 25 total facilities, some big, some small. I'll give you a great example of why this matters. So we're one spring, I had been into a number of our locker rooms and just sort of evaluating what needed to be done. It was a long list. And so I go into our women's basketball locker room, and there are, like the doors on the locker, the hinges are broken off a lot of them. They're hanging off kind of sideways. The seat, the part of the locker that you sit on, maybe it has a hinge that lifts up. That hinge is busted off, so the player just removes it altogether to get in there and then places it back. I mean, it was really terrible. The carpet was filthy, and you could just tell it was old and ripped up, and there's some filthy old couch sitting in the middle of the room, and the lighting is bad, and just like everything about it is terrible. And I'm thinking to myself, I would never take a recruit in here. You'd like to think that your locker room, if a recruit visits, that's a place you take them and they go, oh wow, this is really nice. This is special. Man, I would have just said, oh, and the locker room's down the hall. Let's go get some lunch. Like we would have dodged that completely. And so we raised some money, and we renovated the locker room. Now, what we did was we told the team at the end of the spring, we said, hey, we need you to clean out your stuff. We're going to do some work in here, and we just don't want it in the way. And we didn't tell them anything about what we were doing specifically or how much. So we renovate the room we moved the door, we knocked some walls out, we moved the door around the corner. Like, it was a significant difference. Obviously gutted out the whole space. We redid all the showers. We redid, bathroom countertops, and of course all the lockers, and just the total layout. Even though it was in the same footprint, the locker room itself became much larger than
Yeah.
They just didn't even realize they had the space and how it was being underutilized. So the team comes back in the fall, and we did one of those sort of like what you see on these home renovation shows where we reveal it, the surprise reveal, and we record that. And we walk the team in, and they're just like over the moon, right? They're elated with what we've done. And one of the young ladies came out. For me, I'm just smiling ear to ear. I love seeing that, right? They're happy.
Yeah.
And one of the players came up to me, and she's got tears in her eyes, and she says, "I just can't believe you cared enough to do this." And that sounds sweet, but it really broke my heart, Dan. It broke my heart to think that she believed we didn't care.
Yeah.
So she didn't say that, but that's what she was saying, And what you realize is, if you'll show them, demonstrate to them that you truly care, well, all of a sudden that same team went from like 5th place to 1st place. They finished the regular season in 1st place, same players. And it's not the locker room. Like, the locker room didn't make them number one. What happened, though, is their posture changed.
Yeah.
Their shoulders went back, right? Their head went up. Their pride level changed. Who they saw themselves as, how important they saw themselves to the overarching program changed. And that's what it does, is their expectations of themselves elevated. And that's what it did. And so, yes, it's about, do you have functional space? Then do you have functional space that shows well to recruits? But it's the demonstration of that they matter and that they're important, that is what's important here. And that they went on to play better because they elevated their own view of themselves. And that's why it's so important. And so we've continued to use that model. And look, the football thing is the same. We did the practice facility before we did the stadium, because we knew the practice facility would attract great players, and then we could play in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I'd watch the Lakers play in the parking lot. If they got LeBron, Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors want to play out here in the parking lot, I'm watching them, right? Yeah. So I'm not that I don't love the stadium, but like, if you got a great team, people will watch you.
Yeah.
And we won 3 division titles playing at Legion Field before we ever went to Protective Stadium. And so that's proof that if you take care of those player areas first, you can attract great players. And then you show the need for a stadium or, a better fan space. And we've done that in basketball. We built a basketball practice facility for men's and women's basketball. We continue to have great success. And now we're going to turn our attention to our arena, which is really more the fan areas than the player areas.
I love how you described that in the story that you told, Mark, because you spoke about how can you expect someone to come to your school if they don't feel like you're investing in them, because they're investing in you, their family's investing in you, their family is trusting you. Now you're Division I, right? So they're a student athlete, they're getting their, full cost of attendance. They're not worrying about, paying to come to the school. But for a student or a student athlete, I can say it, walking in as a student, if you're going to show me what you have, like the school I went to, from the moment I walked in to the moment I finished up after 4 years, the campus grew exponentially. There were new buildings, renovated buildings. So many things had changed. And I started MU courtside, my first ever anything with the sports world. It's where my career started, November of 2003. And I started in a gym that I had to crawl under the bleachers with all the dust with my suit on. And I had to attach all the wires myself. If there was a problem in the middle of the game, I'm a part of that staff to try and fix it. Sometimes I felt like I was the only staff. The end, my final year, they built a state-of-the-art facility for athletics in general, put the basketball court in there, and the director of athletics looked at me at the time, Mary Jo Gunning, and I said, thank you for all you do, Mary Jo. And she looked over her shoulder before she stepped on the court at halftime. She had the mic in her hand. She goes, no, thank you. She goes, without you, none of this would be here. We wouldn't have put any plugins for any broadcasts. We would have just built the gym. But because of your show, that's why you have access to all this stuff. They got HD cameras. We were on my network. We were on Fox. that all came from like I came there believing in that this would be a good place. Then I worked my butt off. They invested in me, and look at how much better it was. So you tell that story of how do you expect a human being and their family, their loved ones, to invest in you if you don't invest in them? And once you invest in them and they feel that investment and they want to win because this matters on their chest, not just the name on the back, but this matters. When they're happy to be a Blazer, now they're working hard. Now they're coming together. That same team that you said is middle of the road. Now they're at the top. And now that they're at the top, people want to come. So now you have to do something with the arena because more seats are being taken up. So we talked about a vicious cycle earlier. This is a good cycle. This is I took care of you, then you take care of me, then we take care of the community, and the community takes care of us. And it becomes this constant rotation where you hope that you build that relationship, that when you do lose, the community says, we still care. The players say, we know you care about us and you invest in us. And the coaches say, I'm not going to go run away because you're investing in me and you're taking care of me. You're taking care of my staff. You're taking care of my kids. And I feel good here because we talked about if the American that you're going into isn't such a great conference, if there isn't a P6, then why did the Big 12 take 3 of their schools that people didn't want to give credit to? By the way, I would love for people to go back and I would like to see all the deleted tweets of the years that UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston ain't you know what. And the moment, and I said it to Mike Oresco, I said, isn't this weird? He goes, yeah, Dan, it almost seems like they signed a sheet of paper with a different logo on it and they became a good team.
Yeah.
The only reason why they want them is because of what they built in the American.
Yeah.
And they don't get the credit for that. So I'm going to go one step further with what you said. Has there been a year in college football since the start of the American where someone hasn't tried to poach one of their coaches, if not numerous coaches, is within the autonomy group?
No. And look, Andy Kennedy, my basketball coach, is in his 3rd season. He's had it at the end of his 1st season, at the end of his 2nd season, and no doubt we'll have it again at the end of this season. Overtures from autonomy schools asking about his interest and so forth. There's no doubt that our football coaches get that too. I mean, you can see that over and over again. Luke Fackel, who's now at Wisconsin, from coming out of Cincinnati, goes to Wisconsin. But he's, he had options. He had at least people talking to him before he put that, he settled on, I shouldn't say settled, but landed at Wisconsin and choosing that one because he thought it was a better fit for him, or, all the reasons that whatever that was. But you're making the point is, people can snicker and point fingers and try to pat us on the head all they want, but the evidence is there that our coaches are the ones most desired, and our teams, when they are looking for expansion, here's where they come. And so we're excited about the opportunity to go to the American. We think that we're ready for it, and are just excited about the competition, the level of competition, and I'm excited for our fans. I think our fans are really looking forward to reconnecting in some ways. We used to be in the same league. When the American got formed, UAB got left behind. And it was because of a lack of investment. If you came here before, Dan, we had a track. You mentioned our track, and listeners probably don't. They just sort of, I don't know, maybe they dismiss it. But what I inherited was we had a 4-lane square-shaped track. It was a perfect square. It was not an oval. It was a perfect square, and it sloped 10 feet from one end to the other. So you ran downhill about 120 yards, and you made a 90-degree left-hand turn, and you went flat. And then you made another 90-degree left-hand turn, went uphill, and did it again, and went flat around the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Well, we're not being invited into the American because we built a track, but the track, it's just so symbolic of, like, you don't even have a flat oval-shaped track. Like, every high school in the world has got this. How do you not have this? And what it said without having to look around was, man, you guys don't care. you don't care about it. Whether we cared or we didn't care, it didn't look like we cared. So when the American was choosing its new members to join the American, I didn't even, because again, I was at Temple, so I was in the conversation. UAB wasn't even in the discussion. They weren't even considered back then. But now, fast forward to this, 2 years ago, we were near the top of the list. I think we were at the top of the list, but we were certainly one that we obviously received the invitation, and it's because of the investments we've made to demonstrate, no. We intend to be a team that people want to watch.
Yeah. And I love that. And speaking of that, that's my final note here is they're going to be able to watch it the upcoming season, 2023. The schedule has been released. Your non-conference, you'll play North Carolina A&T, Georgia Southern, Louisiana, and the defending back-to-back college football playoff national champion, Georgia Bulldogs. And from there, your schedule looking different and having some similarities. You have Tulane on the road, then you'll have you'll have Tulane on the road, then you'll have USF at home, you'll have UTSA on the road, you'll have Memphis at home, and then we'll see your game at home against FAU. You'll head to Annapolis, Maryland to take on Navy on the road. You'll head to Temple Temple will head to you, and you'll have that nice connection that you have in your personal history on November 18th when they come to Birmingham. And then you'll end the regular season against North Texas, a team that you know very well. You will also be playing, I want to go back to that Memphis game. You'll be playing at home against Memphis on my birthday of October 21st. So
You need to be here.
And I know that you and I have talked about this. My schedule this past year was eventful in the most beautiful of ways, but you asked me for a visit. I owe you one. And to all the ADs, I want to put on notice out there. Mark Ingram specifically, purposely, and very directly said, you need to come down not for a game, but you need to block out like 3-4 days, and I need to show you the community down here in Birmingham. So I am going to accept that invitation, and I'll find my way down there this year. How excited are you about the new schedule?
Well, I'm thrilled about it. Now, I've got a new head coach in Trent Dilfer who is so exciting and so much fun and has really increased the enthusiasm in our fan base around football. Our fans are as excited as they've ever been. And so that's fun. Now, you mentioned on the road at Georgia, which is the two-time defending national champion. We're on the road at Tulane. They're the defending American Conference and Cotton Bowl champion. Then we're on the road at San Antonio, the two-time defending Conference USA champion. So 3 tough ones there, 3 conference champions all on the road. And then you're on the road at Navy on Veterans Day. So if you don't love America and apple pie and all those things, so we get to go up there. And I do have a personal connection to Temple. I have a personal connection to Navy as well. My son, I have 2 boys and 2 girls. My oldest child, son, is a junior at the Naval Academy. And so we've been up there many times, and that'll be a special game for us. He'll be a senior next year when we play up there. So he's excited. We're excited about that one too. But I think the schedule, what I do like about the schedule is other than so on the road in Athens and then the following week on the road down in New Orleans, other than that, we go home away, very well balanced all year. And our bye game, I think, is around the 8th week, which, perfect, right, would be dead center. Yeah. It is what it is. But, we didn't get a bye week like week 3. That's really hard, or week 11, when at that point in the year, you're so banged up, it doesn't matter anymore. It's kind of nice to have that break there almost in the middle. So I feel really good about the schedule. And again, I'm excited about Memphis coming in. Our fans are so excited. We used to play a game against Memphis. We called it the Battle of the Bones. And there is this, I don't know if you've seen it, Dan. This trophy looks like a brontosaurus from the Flintstones. It's this massive, it is a 95-pound bronze rack of ribs. It is this massive trophy. And seriously, it looks like it's 5 feet wide. And we, UAB, own that series 10-5, but Memphis won the most recent game. So Memphis has the Battle of the Bones trophy, and we'll be rekindling that old rivalry with them, which is that's what makes it fun, right? We're only 3 hours away from Memphis, Tennessee, and It's an easy drive for both our fans and their fans. I sure hope that they'll show up and support their team. I believe that they will. And how much fun is it to sort of, rekindle that rivalry with them? And look, New Orleans is only a 5-hour drive, so that's not far for us or for them, and vice versa. And there's even a train that runs back and forth. So if we wish to use it, so we're fired up about it and excited about the schedule. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and I love that now the Battle of the Bones becomes a conference opportunity, which is really cool. So with that being said, Associate Vice President, Director of Athletics, Mark Ingram, UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, for the Blazers, and for this special spotlight on UAB, brought to you here inside a Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in the Cafe Kubal studios. Mark, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for just how candid you have been, so open about everything that we've spoken about. And I love it from my seat because getting to know UAB through you has been such an amazing way to really get to see everything, because you are not your typical director of athletics for the best of reasons. You're very open, very honest, very much wanting to share the story. And, you share the ups and downs and the in-between. So I thank you for being the person that you are, because you just seem like a humble guy, appreciating his job, willing to talk about it. And I'm happy to tell the story of the people that actually want to tell the full story. So thank you for that.
Yeah, man. Well, you're nice, Dan. Thank you. And thank you for all the coverage you provide our league and certainly UAB here. We appreciate that as well. And you got a great show. You do a great job, and we're all luckier for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.